Hey everyone, happy 2016. It's been a while since I've been in the fish room making a video. Hope you all had a great holiday and time with family and friends. We certainly did, and then took the family across the country to New Orleans for a week of vacation, and then of course you come back and everyone gets sick. So finally back to normal and enjoying a day working on the tanks. And so I hope all of you are having a great start for your new year. Wanted to just show off the Porthole Livebearer tank, and I know it kind of looks like a hot mess, but this tank is kind of settling into, I think, something really nice for this species of fish. I have to say that I know a lot of people have talked about Porthole Livebearers as kind of being that easy fish, breeds easily, and I did not find it to be that way. My opinion was that it's a finicky fish, didn't like flakes, doesn't like a lot of foods, will certainly take, chopped up frozen bloodworms or things like that, but you can't really feed that stuff a lot of the time. And I was feeding, as you can see, I've got some algae wafers in here, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I was feeding some spirulina flakes with pretty high frequency. They don't necessarily like it, but I think it's what they need. And then what happened is I kind of took I had a lot of salvinia in here, and I had guppy grass and some other things. I had a wall of java moss along the back wall. I took all of that out, and I just said I need something different. They're just not thriving. And what ended up happening is once I got all this high light into this tank, I had a lot of algae, hair algae grow on these red basalt rocks, and all of a sudden they seemed to just be thriving. I mean, they were grazing all the time. The females, they tend to kind of bury themselves in there and rest, I think, to get a break from the males. And all of a sudden this tank kind of turned around. And so I guess the point would be that there are times where you really need a ton of algae. There are especially livebearers, it seems like they need to graze a lot, and they need a lot of green in their diet. And some of them just aren't, they'll take spirulina flakes, but these guys, they just seemed really picky. They would not eat flake. And they do to some extent. I don't want to say that, they don't eat flake, but they don't eat flake like any of my other fish. So I just thought I would show this off. This tank is really basic. I've got up at the top, let's see if I can I know it'll be bright up there, but I've got floating water sprite that I just kind of float in here, and I'm using that as my big kind of water. I like the floating plants because they tend to be, they pull a lot of nitrate out of the water, but I didn't want that much cover. I want to keep the light really high. So salvinia is great for kind of dimmer tanks where you're doing a lot of crypts. I wanted something a lot brighter. I've got the Anubias in here. I know that with high light they get a lot of black spot algae on there, but I don't really have another tank. As I was aquascaping other things, it just ended up in here, as is often the case as you kind of change things around to other places. But it seems to be doing okay. It's kind of just shoved into the rocks. It's not really attached to anything. I pull it out occasionally and kind of we'll give the leaves a little finger scrub and just kind of clean things up. And it looks nice. I've got some of the Akari algae wafers this morning in there, and I like to feed algae wafers in these little clear spice bowls. there's a couple reasons. Number one, if they don't eat it all and it kind of falls apart, it turns into this just powdery mess, and you end up having to vacuum it out, or it's just a disgusting mess eventually. So that way I can kind of pull it out or vacuum, it just stays in this bowl. The other tip is that if you've got a lot of snails, and I don't at this point, but oftentimes they'll come and they'll gather on this bowl and eat your wafer, and then it's an easy way to pull out snails. You can just pull out this spice bowl, collect all the snails, and then away you go. So that's what the fish are getting this morning, and they like those Akari wafers. They're pricey, and I don't feed them all that often, but they're good for grazing, and they just are easy to feed them. The substrate is the Fluval. It's not Fluval. It's the Seachem fluorite, and I like how that looks. It's nice. The other thing that really likes this, I found, is the assassin snails. I seem to get a lot more babies in this tank than with my other substrates. I don't know if that's just something about the tank that the assassin snails like, but they certainly seem to breed, and I get a lot more babies in here. And so in a lot of ways, this is kind of my nursery tank for assassin snails. I'm often pulling them out of this tank and putting them in my others. So, and then there's some cherry shrimp in here. This was kind of my first experiment with cherry shrimp in this tank. They haven't done as well as in my rock stack tank with the pictas, but they've come along. I don't know if they're not breeding very well, or if the portholes might be eating the babies. I can't imagine that. I think I just haven't gotten a drop yet of the little cherry shrimp. In the other tank, they're going crazy. So that's this tank, guys. I just wanted to get this done and just show you what's going on in the fish room. It is probably my lowest tech tank. It's really basic, but I like how it's coming along, and I like how the fish are starting to really respond, and their behavior seems better. When I had the moss wall along the back, the tank was really dim. It was very crowded, and they didn't seem to they kind of hid in the back and up against the light. So once I kind of opened this tank up and I got a lot more light in here, they seem to have responded. And I've got a lot of fry. They're kind of up near the top, and it's pretty bright, but they're up in the water sprite up in here. I've got both some fry of the portholes and the yellow jacket endlers going in there. The nice thing is that the spots of the portholes show up right away, so you can tell instantly which fry or which. The yellow jackets are kind of a yellow color, but they look like your standard olive, kind of bland live bear for a while. The portholes certainly have the spots show up right away. So hope you're all doing well. Just wanted to get this done and get it out to you, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.